It's just a hypothetical question. That's what I said when I shrugged and laughed at the dinner table, wine glass raised like I was making a toast to my own cleverness. Would I betray the person I love for $10 million? Absolutely. Anyone who says different is lying to themselves. Loyalty's just a word people use when they haven't been offered enough money yet. Everyone at the table laughed, clinking glasses and nodding like I'd said something profound instead of cruel. Everyone except Kiera. She sat across from me in that blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday, the one that made her eyes look like the ocean. She didn't flinch, didn't argue, didn't even look surprised. Just sipped her wine slowly, stared at her hands resting on the white tablecloth, and blinked slower than usual, like she was processing something heavy. I didn't know it then, couldn't have guessed it in that moment of casual cruelty disguised as honesty. But something between us died right there. Something essential and irreplaceable, like trust or faith or whatever invisible thing holds two people together when everything else falls apart. My name is Evan Lorne, and I need you to understand something important right from the start. I'm not a villain. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I didn't wake up that morning planning to destroy the best relationship I'd ever had with a single thoughtless comment. But sometimes cruelty doesn't announce itself with shouting or violence. Sometimes it looks like sarcasm, like edgy humor, like being brutally honest when kindness would have cost you nothing. I used to be fluent in that language. Mocking sincerity, devaluing emotion, treating love like it was some naive fairy tale that smart people grew out of. Kiera loved me anyway for 3 whole years. She saw something in me I didn't see in myself, believed in a version of me that maybe never actually existed. I thought her love was unconditional, that it would always be there no matter what I said or did. I thought love meant never having to prove yourself. I was wrong about everything. I didn't realize that loyalty isn't something you can joke your way out of. It's something you prove every single day or you lose it forever. She didn't leave right away. That's what confused me later, made me think maybe she hadn't cared about my comment as much as I feared. She cooked dinner the next night, her famous pasta carbonara that she knew I loved. She kissed me goodnight, her lips warm against my forehead. She smiled when I said I'd be working late on the Henderson project, told me not to stress too much. Everything seemed normal on the surface, like we were the same couple we'd always been. But something had shifted in a way I couldn't quite identify. Everything felt a little slower, more measured, like she was moving through water instead of air. Like she was watching me differently now, taking mental notes about things I said and did. Like she was conducting some kind of experiment and I was the unknowing subject. I noticed it but didn't understand it. Didn't think to ask what was wrong. Just assumed she was tired from work or stressed about her grandmother's failing health. I had no idea I was being tested. The first test came 3 days after that dinner. Kiera left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while she showered, something she never did. She was always careful about her privacy, not in a suspicious way, just in a normal boundaries way. But that morning her phone sat there face up, screen glowing with a new message notification. I saw it while pouring coffee. A text from a name I didn't recognize. You made the right decision. I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. I stared at those words for a full minute, trying to decode their meaning. Right decision about what? Choosing herself over what? Was she planning to leave me? Was she talking to another man? The old Evan would have confronted her immediately, demanded explanations, maybe even looked through her entire phone. But this new version of me, the one who'd loudly proclaimed that loyalty didn't matter, couldn't exactly get angry about potential disloyalty. So I said nothing. Didn't ask, didn't care, told myself it was probably just work drama or friend advice. If she was cheating, that was on her, not me. I had no idea I was the one being tested, that my indifference was being carefully documented. The second test was more obvious, though I still didn't recognize it. Kiera left her wallet at home before heading out for what she called a weekend wellness retreat with college friends. She was halfway out the door when she came back, grabbed it from the hall table, then left again. But something made me look. Maybe curiosity, maybe suspicion, maybe just boredom. I opened her brown leather wallet, the one I'd given her 2 Christmases ago. Inside was cash, credit cards, her driver's license with that terrible photo she always complained about. And tucked behind everything, a photograph of us from our first vacation together in Colorado. Except it wasn't whole anymore. Someone had torn it carefully down the middle, right between our smiling faces. Only my side remained in her wallet, my face grinning stupidly at the camera, her half completely gone. I stared at that torn photo for a long time, my heart beating faster. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. This was a message. Still I said nothing. Put the wallet back exactly where I'd found it. Didn't mention it when she came home Sunday night. Just pretended I hadn't seen it. A week later, Kiera asked me a question that seemed random at the time. We were watching some crime show on television, a drama about infidelity and betrayal. During a commercial break, she turned to me with this carefully casual expression. Hypothetically, she said, if one of your friends was cheating on his wife, and the wife asked you directly if you knew anything, would you tell her the truth? I barely thought about my answer. Of course not. Brothers before everything. You don't rat out your friends even if they're making mistakes. That's just the code. I took a sip of beer, proud of my answer. She nodded slowly, just once, her face completely neutral. Then she picked up the remote and changed the channel to some cooking show. Subject dropped. I thought I'd passed some kind of test. I had no idea I'd just failed catastrophically. She was building a case against me, piece by piece, using my own words and choices as evidence. And I was too blind and arrogant to see it happening right in front of me. 2 weeks after that dinner party, Kiera asked if I wanted to start a business together. She'd been thinking about it for months, she said. A consulting firm that combined her marketing expertise with my project management skills. She'd even talked to investors, had a solid business plan, knew exactly how much startup capital we'd need. I could fund it, she said over breakfast, spreading jam on toast. $75,000 up front. We'd be equal partners, 50-50 on everything. What do you think? I hesitated, and not for the reasons I should have. I wasn't thinking about the risks or the work-life balance or whether we'd be good business partners. I was calculating. If she put in $75,000 and we were equal partners, I'd basically be getting paid $37,000 just for showing up. Maybe I could find ways to take a bit more, pay myself a higher salary, keep some extra on the side. She'd never notice. She was too trusting. Her expression changed slightly as she watched me think. Something shifted in her eyes. You know what? She said quietly. Forget I mentioned it. Bad timing with everything else going on. She never brought it up again. One morning in April, exactly 6 weeks after that dinner party, I woke up alone. The bed beside me was cold, empty, untouched. I figured Kiera had gotten up early, maybe gone for a run or to grab coffee. But when I checked the bathroom, her toothbrush was gone. When I opened the closet, her side was completely empty. Hangers swaying slightly, the only evidence that clothes had hung there yesterday. Her keys were missing from the hook by the door. Her shoes gone from the rack. Her books vanished from the shelves. The apartment looked exactly the same but felt completely hollow, like a stage set of our life together rather than the real thing. No fight had preceded this. No final argument. No warning signs I'd recognized. Just silence and absence. There was a single note taped to the bathroom mirror, written in her neat handwriting on cream-colored paper. I read it 3 times before the words actually penetrated. You said you'd betray someone you love for $10 million. I never thought I'd be worth so little to you. Goodbye, Evan. That was it. No explanation. No second chances. Just gone. I didn't chase her. Not at first. Pride is louder than grief when you're 29 and convinced you're always right about everything. I told myself she was overreacting, being dramatic, that she'd come back once she cooled down and realized I'd been joking at that dinner. It was just a hypothetical question. Just words. She couldn't actually be ending a 3-year relationship over a comment made at a party. Could she? But after 1 week, the silence started getting to me. After 2 weeks, I broke down and texted her. 20 messages went unanswered. I called, left voicemails that ranged from casual to angry to desperate. Hey, can we talk? This is ridiculous, Kiera. Please, I'm sorry, just tell me what I did wrong. Nothing. Complete radio silence. She'd blocked me on social media. Her phone went straight to voicemail like she'd changed her number. Email bounced back as undeliverable. It was like she'd erased me from her existence as thoroughly as she'd erased herself from mine. And I started hearing the silence everywhere. In the empty apartment. In conversations where I'd start to mention her and have to stop. In the space where her laughter used to be. 6 months passed in a blur of work and isolation and slowly going crazy from the absence of her. I'd moved on to anger by then, convinced she'd been unreasonable, that I'd dodged a bullet with someone so sensitive. Then one afternoon I ran into her brother Preston at a coffee shop downtown. We'd always gotten along well. He seemed surprised to see me, uncomfortable even. Evan, he said carefully. How are you holding up? Fine, I lied. You know. Moving forward. He nodded, stirring sugar into his coffee. That's good. Kiera's doing well too, in case you were wondering. The inheritance helped with her fresh start. My brain stuttered. Inheritance. Preston's face changed, like he'd said something he shouldn't have. From our grandmother. She passed away last year. Left Kiera everything. Over $10 million. The coffee shop sounds faded to white noise. 10 million. The exact number from my stupid joke. She inherited that before we broke up? I asked slowly. Preston nodded. Got the first payment about 2 months before you split. Didn't she tell you? She hadn't. She told me nothing. And when she'd left me, she was already richer than I'd ever be in my entire life. Everything clicked into place in that moment, standing in a coffee shop holding lukewarm coffee while Preston looked at me with something like pity. It wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. Kiera had asked me questions over those 6 weeks. Would I betray my friends' wives? Would I pocket extra money from a business partner? Each question had been a test of my character, my values, my loyalty. And I'd failed every single one spectacularly. She'd left her phone unlocked to see if I'd snoop or confront her. I'd done neither, too indifferent to care. She'd torn our photo in half to see if I'd notice, if I'd say something. I'd stayed silent. She'd offered to fund a business to see if I'd be a fair partner or try to take advantage. I'd immediately started calculating how to exploit her trust. She hadn't left because I'd failed once at that dinner party. She'd left because I'd failed her value system repeatedly, consistently, every single time she'd given me a chance to prove I was better than my words. And I hadn't been. I'd been exactly who I'd claimed to be at that table. Someone for whom loyalty was negotiable, love was conditional, and $10 million was more valuable than any relationship. I tried to move on. Dated other women through apps and blind dates set up by well-meaning friends. First there was Marissa, a lawyer who talked endlessly about billable hours. Then Cassidy, an artist who cried at every movie. Then Rochelle, who was perfectly nice and perfectly boring. Each date turned into a ghost, fading away after 2 or 3 meetings when they realized my heart wasn't in it. Because none of them felt like Kiera. None of them looked at me the way she had, like I was capable of being someone better than I actually was. None of them believed in me the way she had, saw potential I'd never lived up to. And I had treated her belief like it was disposable, like faith in me was something cheap and common that I could discard without consequences. Every date made it worse, made me more aware of what I'd lost. These women were fine, nice, attractive even. But they weren't her. They didn't have her laugh or her way of tilting her head when she was thinking or her terrible singing voice in the shower or the way she'd believed in me unconditionally until I'd proven I didn't deserve it. 18 months after she left, I saw her across a restaurant in Seattle during a work trip. Different city, hundreds of miles from home, and there she was. I recognized her profile immediately even though her hair was shorter, her style slightly different. She sat at a corner table with friends, laughing at something someone had said, her whole face lit up in a way I remembered from our early days together. She looked happy. Not just okay or functioning but genuinely, deeply happy. Full of life. Free from whatever weight I'd represented in her world. She didn't see me. I sat frozen with my menu, watching her for 10 minutes before my food arrived. Part of me wanted to walk over there, to apologize, to beg for another chance to prove I'd changed. But I couldn't move. Because watching her from across that restaurant, I realized something that hurt more than her leaving ever had. Some love doesn't come back. Not even when you finally change. Not even when you finally understand what you lost. Some doors close and lock behind you, and no amount of apologizing or growth or desperate knocking will open them again. I'd had my chance with her, thousands of chances actually, and I'd wasted every single one. That night in my hotel room I wrote her a letter. 5 pages, single-spaced, everything I should have said months ago. I confessed everything. How I was ashamed of who I'd been. How I missed the version of me she'd seen because I hadn't even believed in that person until she left. How I understood now that she'd given me test after test, opportunity after opportunity to prove I valued her more than money or pride or convenience. How I'd failed spectacularly every single time. I wrote about the business proposal, how I'd immediately started calculating ways to exploit her $75,000 investment. I wrote about her torn photograph, how I'd seen it and said nothing. I wrote about every moment of casual cruelty, every joke at love's expense, every time I'd chosen to be clever instead of kind. I wrote until my hand cramped and my eyes burned from crying. Then I read it over 3 times, folded it carefully, put it in an envelope. And never sent it. Because some apologies come too late. Because saying sorry doesn't undo the damage. Because she deserved peace more than I deserved forgiveness. Years passed slowly. I got promoted at work, made senior project manager, then director of operations. Started traveling internationally for contracts, managing teams across 3 continents. Built a career that looked impressive on paper. Bought a condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows, Drove a car that cost more than I'd made in a year when Kiera and I were together. From the outside I was successful. Thriving even. But no professional achievement ever filled the hole where her respect used to be. I'd lie awake at 3 in the morning in expensive hotel rooms in Frankfurt or Tokyo or Dubai, staring at ceilings and thinking about that dinner party. About how different everything might have been if I'd just said, no. Love is worth more than any amount of money. Such simple words. They would have cost me nothing. Instead, I'd chosen to be clever and cynical. Chosen to get cheap laughs from people whose names I couldn't even remember now. Chosen wrong at every single opportunity she'd given me to choose right. Success meant nothing without someone to share it with who actually believed in me. Money meant nothing when the person I wanted to spend it on was gone forever. In my 5th year without her, work sent me overseas for an emergency project. Medical logistics in a developing country, coordinating supply chains for rural clinics. Long flights, terrible connections, layovers in airports that smelled like jet fuel and desperation. When I finally arrived, it was all dust and heat and too bright sun. The work was hard, physically exhausting, nothing like my usual desk job. Loading supplies, driving rough roads, setting up temporary facilities. My muscles ached every night. I sweated through clothes in minutes. Went days without proper showers. But for the first time in 5 years, I felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with profit margins or quarterly reviews. These people needed help. Real help. And for a brief window, I could provide it without thinking about what I'd get in return. The local coordinator, a woman named Sister Margaret, told me I was different from most corporate volunteers. You actually care, she said. Most come for resume padding. You're here for something else. Penance maybe? She was right, though I didn't admit it. I was trying to become someone Kiera might have been proud of. Even though she'd never know. 3 weeks into the project, our convoy was stopped at a roadblock. Men in mismatched uniforms carrying automatic weapons, their faces covered with cloth. At first, I thought it was a legitimate checkpoint. Then I saw the fear in our driver's eyes. Saw Sister Margaret whisper a prayer. Understood too late what was happening. They dragged me out of the vehicle first, threw me to the ground hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. Someone kicked my ribs. Someone else hit the back of my head with something hard. I tasted blood and dirt. They blindfolded me with rough fabric that smelled like gasoline, zip-tied my wrists so tight my hands went numb within minutes. Threw me in the back of a truck that bounced over terrible roads for what felt like hours. When they finally stopped and pulled me out, I was tied to a metal post in some kind of warehouse. Hot, airless, the smell of rust and fear. They left me there for hours. No food, little water, just heat and terror. Eventually, someone who spoke English explained. $5 million ransom. American companies paid these all the time. I'd be home in a week. Except I wouldn't. Nobody came. Not for days, then weeks. My company refused to pay, citing policy against negotiating with terrorists. The embassy stalled, saying they were working on it but providing no updates. My parents didn't have that kind of money, not even close. My brother tried to organize a crowdfunding campaign that raised $40,000 before stalling completely. I stopped eating what little food they gave me, not out of protest but because my stomach couldn't handle it anymore. Lost 20 pounds. Developed infections. Started fading in a way that felt permanent. I prepared to die in that warehouse, thousands of miles from home, alone and forgotten. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd claimed loyalty was worthless, that I'd betray anyone for money. Now I was dying because nobody thought I was worth $5 million. Karma had a cruel sense of humor. Then one morning, everything changed. They cut my ropes without explanation. Threw me in the back of a vehicle. Drove for hours. Left me on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, alive but barely. Free but confused. A jeep appeared minutes later like they'd been waiting. The driver didn't speak. Just gestured for me to get in, handed me water and bread. I was too weak to question it, too grateful to be alive. We drove for hours through landscape I didn't recognize. When we finally stopped at a small airport, a private plane waited on the tarmac. Still, nobody explained anything. On the dashboard of the jeep, I noticed an envelope. Cream-colored paper. My name written in handwriting that made my heart stop. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, a single sentence in Kiera's neat script. Even after everything, I knew you were worth saving. You just didn't. No signature. No explanation. Nothing else. But I knew. Somehow, impossibly, she'd known I was in danger. She'd paid $5 million to people who would have killed me. She'd arranged my rescue, my transportation, my escape. The woman I'd betrayed with my words and my actions. The woman whose trust I'd destroyed, The woman who'd tested me repeatedly and watched me fail every single time. She'd saved my life anyway. Not because I deserved it, but because she'd seen something in me once and apparently that was enough. I was flown home on that private plane, treated by doctors who asked no questions. 3 days in a private medical facility where nurses monitored my recovery, where I gained back weight slowly, where infections were treated with expensive antibiotics. Everything handled smoothly, professionally, anonymously. When I tried to find out who'd arranged it, I hit walls everywhere. The hospital had been paid in full by a foundation. The plane had been chartered by a shell company. The medical staff had signed non-disclosure agreements. Nobody would tell me anything concrete, though I knew. I knew in my bones that Kiera had done this. That she'd spent $5 million of her inheritance to save the man who'd publicly proclaimed he'd betray her for $10 million. The math was deliberate, I realized. Half the amount I'd named. Like she was proving that real loyalty didn't need the full price tag. That love wasn't transactional. That some people saved others simply because it was right, not because they'd profit from it. I'd spent years believing everyone had a price. Kiera had proven that some people didn't. Months passed. I recovered physically but struggled mentally, trying to process what had happened. Trying to understand why she'd done it. One afternoon I got an alert on my phone. A foundation donation matching service I'd signed up for years ago and forgotten about. Someone had made a major charitable contribution in Kiera's full name. $5 million to an international foundation supporting trauma victims and hostage recovery. Under the contribution details, a dedication line, in honor of those who can still be redeemed. Then listed below my name. Not hidden or anonymous. Right there in the public record. She'd saved my life with $5 million, then donated an identical amount to help save others. $10 million total. The exact number from my joke at that dinner party 5 years ago. She'd spent the amount I'd named as my price for betrayal, split it between saving me personally and saving strangers she'd never meet, and attached both acts to her name publicly. This wasn't about me getting what I deserved. This was about her proving what loyalty actually looked like when you lived it instead of just talking about it. I bought a mirror just like the one we'd had in our apartment, the one where she'd left her goodbye note. Hung it in my bathroom in the same spot. Taped a note to it written in my own handwriting on cream paper that matched hers. If she still believes I'm worth something, maybe I should too. I read that note every morning while brushing my teeth. Let it sink in slowly over weeks and months. Started making different choices. Small ones at first. Holding the door for strangers. Tipping more generously. Being honest when it would have been easier to lie. Defending colleagues when others gossiped. Calling out friends when they said cruel things disguised as jokes. Each choice was tiny, insignificant on its own. But together they started building something. A version of myself that might eventually resemble the man Kiera had once believed I could be. The man she'd saved despite everything. I wasn't doing it to win her back. That ship had sailed permanently. I was doing it because she'd proven that redemption was possible, and wasting that chance would be the ultimate betrayal. The final test. The one I refused to fail. I buried the old version of myself. Not with shame exactly, though there was plenty of that. But with clarity about who I'd been and why it had nearly destroyed me. The man who'd laughed at loyalty had almost died because he couldn't recognize its value when someone embodied it completely. That man had treated love like a transaction, relationships like business deals, people like resources to be managed or exploited. He'd been clever with words but bankrupt in character. Had mistaken cynicism for wisdom and cruelty for honesty. Thought being brutally frank made him authentic when really it just made him brutal. That man was gone now. Dead in a warehouse overseas, or maybe dead at a dinner party 5 years earlier when he'd said something unforgivable disguised as a joke. What remained was someone different. Not better yet, not fixed, but aware. Aware of the weight of words. Aware that love wasn't something you could joke your way out of. Aware that some people's faith in you was a gift you didn't deserve but should honor anyway. I thought about Kiera every day but differently now. Not with the desperate yearning to fix what I'd broken. With gratitude that she'd existed at all. I volunteer now regularly. Homeless shelters on Tuesdays. Food banks on Thursdays. Teaching financial literacy at community centers on Saturday mornings. No social media posts about it. No telling coworkers or friends. No using it to make myself look good at parties or on dating profiles. Just quiet repair work, trying to put something good into the world to balance out all the casual cruelty I'd distributed so freely for years. Some weeks I organize donation drives. Other weeks I tutor kids who remind me of my younger self, arrogant and clever but missing something essential about how to be human. I tell them things I wish someone had told me. That kindness isn't weakness. that loyalty isn't naive. That the person who loves you when you're nobody is worth more than anyone who loves you when you're somebody. I'm not doing any of this to win Kiera back. That door is closed and I've accepted it. I'm doing it to become the man I should have been when I had her. The man she believed existed underneath all my defensive sarcasm and emotional unavailability. Better late than never, even if she'll never see it. I still don't know where Kiera is now. Probably moved on completely, built a beautiful life somewhere far from me and the memory of my cruelty. I'll probably never see her again, never get a chance to thank her properly for saving my life when she had every reason to let me die. But I carry her belief in me every day like a talisman. When I'm tempted to be clever at someone's expense, I remember her silence at that dinner table. When I'm tempted to mock sincerity or treat love like a joke, I remember her tests and how badly I failed them. When I'm tempted to prioritize money over people, I remember that she spent $5 million to save someone who'd said he'd betray her for 10. She showed me the price of real loyalty not through words but through action. Paid that price even though I'd never earned it. Saved my life not because I deserved it, but because she was a better person than I'd ever been. Some lessons come too late to save the relationship but just in time to save your soul. This was mine. And though I'll never be able to repay her directly, I repay her every day by never failing myself again. By being someone worthy of the faith she once had in me. By proving that even the most cynical person can change if someone believes in them hard enough and walks away when they don't live up to that belief. She was right to leave. But she was also right to save me. Both things can be true.